In the far edge of the galaxy, silence ruled the stars. The great empires believed they controlled all that existed. Their fleets patrolled the void, their councils made decisions for millions of worlds, and their historians wrote that the age of danger had ended long ago. But they were wrong. Deep in the darkness, far beyond the maps of any alien race, something old awakened. It was not a planet, not a star, not even a signal that could be explained. It was a warship, massive, black as the void, larger than any alien fleet carrier. Its surface was covered in strange markings that no one could translate. It did not speak. It did not send messages. It only moved slowly and silently, its engines burning with a strange light that bent space around it. The first ones to notice were the traders of the Rim, small ships carrying goods between forgotten stations. They reported a shadow in the void, a shape too large to be real. Their messages were laughed at by the Central Worlds. The idea of a single warship traveling alone was impossible. But then the signal came. A pulse spread across the galaxy, so strong that even the smallest communication devices caught it. It was not a word, not a language, only a vibration that made every species feel the same thing: fear. The Galactic Council gathered in their golden chambers. Leaders of insectoid hives, reptilian dynasties, and machine intellects argued in panic. Some said it was a new empire testing secret weapons. Others believed it was a dying star. But the oldest among them whispered a name almost forgotten: humans. No one had spoken that word for thousands of years. Most believed they had died out, before the galaxy even reached its golden age. Yet the record spoke of them, a race that had risen from a small blue planet, who fought wars not for survival, but for dominance, who built weapons not to defend, but to conquer, and who vanished without leaving a trace. If the warship was theirs, then history was no longer safe. While the council argued, the warship kept moving. It did not answer hails. It did not change course. It did not care about fleets that surrounded it. A group of proud warlords sent a formation of ships to block its path. Their ships were among the strongest in the known stars, armed with plasma cannons and shield walls. They demanded the warship identify itself. There was silence. They fired a warning shot. In response, the warship shifted, its dark surface glowing with hidden lights, and in one single beam of energy, the entire fleet vanished. Not destroyed into wreckage. Vanished, like dust in the wind. The galaxy trembled. Messages flew faster than light. Entire empires shook with fear. The word spread to every world. An ancient warship had returned, and it carried the mark of the lost race. On worlds where history was still taught, children asked their parents if the stories were true. Stories of humans who never surrendered, who could fight 1,000 enemies with only one ship, who would rather burn the stars than kneel to another. The parents had no answers. Even the machine races, who felt no emotion, began to calculate the impossible. One ship had defeated thousands. If more existed, the galaxy was already lost. But the warship did not attack planets. It did not demand surrender. It only moved, slow and steady, toward the galactic core. Its silence was more terrifying than any weapon, because no one knew why it had come or what it wanted. The council tried again to communicate, sending coded messages in 1,000 different languages. No reply. They tried to approach with peace. Offerings, gifts of energy, treasures, data archives. The ships carrying those gifts never returned. Panic began to spread. Some empires whispered of fleeing the galaxy, of abandoning everything before the unknown destroyer arrived. Others prepared for war, building fleets larger than ever before. But none of them knew the truth. Inside the warship, in chambers colder than the void, in halls where footsteps had not echoed for centuries, the last guardians of Earth had awakened. Their voices were silent, their faces hidden, but their eyes looked upon the galaxy with memory and judgment. For them, time had not passed. They remembered the betrayals, the wars, the way the galaxy once turned against humanity. They had been patient, waiting in the dark, letting the stars forget them. Now the stars would remember. The first part of the story had only begun. The galaxy thought it was powerful, thought it was united, thought it understood the dangers of space. But against one warship of Earth, all their pride was nothing. The silent arrival was not an accident. It was a warning. A shadow had fallen. Across the stars, and with it, the return of a species that had once shaken the universe. And this time, humanity was not here to ask permission. The galaxy had not seen such panic in thousands of years as the alien leaders gathered in the Grand Hall of the Council, a place so ancient that its walls were made from living crystal that stored the memories of every meeting since the dawn of galactic order. The chamber stretched high into the void with endless banners of different empires hanging from above. Insectoid hive queens hissed in anger. Reptilian warlords slammed their claws on the floor. Avian emperors shrieked in frustration, and the machine minds filled the room with cold, logical tones. All of them argued, shouted, and demanded action. For one thing united them all, fear of the warship that had destroyed a fleet with a single strike. The Speaker of the Council, a towering being of silver skin, tried to calm the storm, but his voice was drowned by 1,000 tongues. The insectoid queen of the Koresh clicked her mandibles and declared that the intruder must be destroyed before it reached the core. The reptilian warlord of the Targan roared that to wait was weakness, while the machine intellect known as prime logic calculated that all current fleets combined still had less than a 2% chance of success. Some called for diplomacy, others called for war, and some whispered of fleeing to other galaxies. But then an old archivist stepped forward. His scales faded and his body weak, yet his voice was steady. He spoke of records almost forgotten, records that told of a species once called human. At first, the chamber laughed. The word sounded strange and old, but the archivist reminded them that the galaxy itself had feared this name long ago. The machines confirmed through their ancient data caches that fragments of human history still existed, though most had been erased. The records described a small planet called Earth, a world of oceans and storms where fragile creatures had risen to power through endless conflict. They fought each other until no rival was left. They built weapons to reach the stars, not for exploration but for survival and dominance. Every empire that tried to crush them had failed, until one day they vanished. Some believed they destroyed themselves. Others claimed they went into hiding, but the truth was never found. Now the warship had appeared, and its design matched the fragments in the record's black hulls covered in symbols of Earth technologies, weapons that bent reality itself. If this ship was human, then the galaxy was facing not a new empire, but an old. Nightmare reborn silence filled the hall as the truth sank in. The reptilian warlord growled in frustration, declaring that old myths should not decide their future. But even his eyes showed doubt. The machine intellects projected probabilities on the wall's endless streams of numbers showing destruction and collapse. If war was chosen, fear grew heavier and heavier until it crushed the voices of the council. Finally, the speaker raised his hand and called for a vote: attack, negotiate, or flee. But before they could decide, the chamber shook. A signal had entered every communication line, every world, every ship, every device. It was not a word, yet it was understood by all species. A pulse that carried meaning without language. And the meaning was simple. We are back. The chamber fell into chaos. Some screamed, some cried, some refused to believe, but no one could ignore the message the human warship had spoken without speaking, and it was enough to send the galaxy into terror outside. The council fleets were already preparing war factories. glowed brighter than suns. Soldiers marched across training grounds. Leaders hid their fear behind speeches promising victory. Yet deep down, they all knew one truth. The galaxy had never faced anything like this before, and one warship had already broken their pride. The Council continued its desperate debates. Some still argued for peace. Some dreamed of an alliance with the returning humans. Perhaps humanity sought only respect, not war, perhaps. They had come to guide, not to rule, but others knew better. The legends spoke of humanity as conquerors, not saviors. They had been betrayed once by the galaxy, and such wounds never heal in hidden corners. Spies and agents began to plan. They sought to sneak into the warship, to steal its technology, to learn its purpose. But every attempt ended the same silence. No ship returned. No signal escaped, and the void swallowed all who dared to approach. The Council faced a choice unlike any in history. Should they risk open war and face extinction? Should they kneel before the unknown and hope for mercy? Or should they flee and abandon everything they had built? There was no answer, and the warship kept moving slow, calm, inevitable, toward the galactic core. With every passing moment, the galaxy realized that its future no longer belonged to them. It belonged to the humans who had returned after ages of silence, and the Council of Fear could only wait to learn what judgment would fall from the stars. The galaxy did not wait long to test the intruder, for after the message "we are back" had spread through every channel of communication, the empires that still believed in their strength gathered fleets near the path of the human warship. Thousands of ships formed walls of steel and fire. Their commanders, proud and arrogant, declared that they would be the ones to stop the silent ship and prove to the galaxy that the old legends were nothing but fear tales. The warship drifted forward without changing speed, without sending words, without care for the display of force. The first fleet commander, a reptilian general named Varak, ordered the intruder to halt. His voice broadcast across every channel in a dozen languages, warning that any further movement would be seen as an act of war. But the warship did not answer. Its hull remained dark. Its engines pulsed like the heart of a dead star in frustration. Varak gave the order, "Fire a warning shot." Beams of plasma missiles of light and bursts of energy lanced across the void, striking the surface of the human warship. The galaxy waited, holding its breath, expecting shields to flash or armor to break, but nothing happened. The weapons touched the hull and vanished, as if swallowed by the dark metal. No flames, no explosion, only silence. Varak shouted for a full barrage. Thousands of guns fired at once. The stars turned into storms of energy, yet still the warship moved untouched, as if the attacks were only wind passing through stone. Then, without warning, the warship awoke, its black surface lit with rivers of crimson light, lines of power crawling across its hull like veins, glowing brighter and brighter until the ship itself looked like a burning star. One single turret rotated, slowly locking on the alien fleet. The galaxy watched through countless sensors as a beam of light emerged, silent, cold, and merciless. It was not fire. It was not plasma. It was something far older and far stronger. Reality bent where the beam passed. And then the fleet was gone, not broken, not scattered, gone, erased in an instant. Where once thousands of warships floated, there was only empty void, no wreckage, no drifting bodies, no sparks of flame, only silence. Once more, the galaxy screamed entire. Worlds fell into panic. Governments collapsed. Generals cursed and priests declared the end of days. How could one ship erase 1,000 without effort? How could any empire stand against such power? Fear spread like fire across the stars. Messages filled the council halls. Some demanded surrender, others swore revenge. But all agreed on one thing. Humanity had returned, and their weapons were beyond imagination. In the ruins of the First Fleet, survivors on nearby stations sent desperate cries. They spoke of a shadow that covered the stars, of a silence that felt like death, of a fear that entered the hearts of every living creature. Even those who did not believe in fear, the machine races who had no emotion, reported strange errors in their code, as if their logic itself had broken before what they had witnessed. The human warship did not celebrate, it did not even pause. It simply continued its path steady and calm toward the galactic core, ignoring the destruction it had left. Behind, the Council tried again to communicate, this time offering Peace-Rich's knowledge. But no reply came, only the silent presence of the warship moving like a ghost. Some believed it was a test. Others believed it was a declaration of war. But none could deny that first blood had been spilled, and it was not the humans who bled. Whispers began in the shadows that perhaps this was not just a ship, but a messenger. Perhaps more warships slept in the void waiting to be awakened. If one ship could destroy thousands, what would 10 do? What would 100 do? Fear turned to madness as empires prepared for war. Even allies turned against each other, accusing one another of weakness, of betrayal, of planning to kneel before humanity, while others began secret prayers, hoping that the legends of human mercy were true. But the truth was simple. The galaxy had seen its first contact with humanity in ages, and it had been written in blood and silence, and the warship moved on, uncaring, unshaken, unstoppable, leaving behind only a question that echoed across the stars. If one ship could do this, what hope did the galaxy have when the full force of humanity arrived? The galaxy trembled after the first battle, and while fleets burned and leaders argued, one voice rose above the chaos. The voice of an old historian who had lived his life buried in records forgotten by most. His name was Soren, a scholar from a minor world who had studied the ancient archives for centuries, mocked by the proud empires as a dreamer. He was now called into the Grand Council chamber, for the galaxy demanded answers about the name human. Soren spoke with a voice that shook with both fear and certainty. He told them of the old legends of how long ago before the empires, before the council, before the stars were divided, humanity had risen from a small blue world they called Earth, a planet of oceans and storms, where fragile creatures of flesh and bone learned to master fire, to build machines to travel. The void, they were weak compared to the reptilian giants and insectoid swarms of their age, yet they did not die. They fought and survived, and every war they faced only made them stronger. The legends said that humans never accepted chains. No empire could enslave them, for they would fight until only ashes remained. They built weapons not to scare, but to conquer their enemies. They created warships that could bend gravity, split moons, and burn worlds. Some empires tried to destroy them, but humanity always returned harder, sharper, more determined than before, and then one day they vanished. The records ended without answer. Some believed they destroyed themselves in wars too great to survive. Others whispered they had hidden in the dark, waiting and watching, building strength until the galaxy forgot them. The warship that now moved through the stars was proof the legends were true. The council listened in silence, their pride cracked by fear, as Soren repeated the last warning found in the archives: beware the day the sons of Earth return, for they will not come as friends but as rulers. Many refused to believe, but deep inside their hearts trembled, because what they had seen matched the stories: one ship against thousands, and the Yi ship did not fall instead. It erased its enemies like dust. The council demanded more details. What were the humans truly? What did they want? Soren could only shake his head and say, the archives did not tell of their purpose, only their nature. And their nature was war across the stars. Whispers spread entire civilizations, remembered fragments of human encounters. The insectoid Koresh recalled an age when their hives tried to invade a human colony, only to lose 1 million soldiers to a handful. Of human defenders, the reptilian Targan told tales of duels, where human captains fought until death, without fear, even against beasts 10 times their size. The avian empires spoke of human explorers who crossed void storms where no other species dared to fly the machine. Intellects showed encrypted records hidden in their deepest cores programs, so old their creators had forgotten them. Warnings about a species called humans, tagged with one simple command: avoid at all costs everywhere. The past returned stories that were once myths, now became truth, and the galaxy began to understand why fear filled their ancestors when the name of humanity was spoken. Yet even in fear, there were divisions. Some leaders believed the return of humans could be an opportunity that perhaps aligning with them would grant power. Others believed no bargain could be trusted, for humans were said to betray as easily as they allied. Their loyalty was only to themselves, while empires debated ordinary. Citizens across the stars asked questions, mothers told children to pray, soldiers sharpened weapons, priests screamed of judgment day, and criminals whispered of rebellion. But above it all hung one truth. The legends were alive again, and the galaxy stood on the edge of a storm. The human warship did not slow, did not stop, did not explain it. Moved toward the galactic core as if following a path written long ago. Its silence was a message, and the message was louder than any weapon the galaxy had faced war before. But this was not war. This was the return of a species that had been forgotten and now remembered, and the stars themselves seemed to dim at their approach. The forgotten legends were no longer forgotten. They were alive. They were awake, and soon every empire would learn whether humanity had come for vengeance or for destiny. Fear spread across the galaxy like fire racing through dry grass after the destruction of the fleets and the awakening of the forgotten legends. No world felt safe, no empire felt strong, and no leader could sleep without trembling in the dark. The human warship was not simply a weapon. It was a shadow that fell over every star system, and with every silent movement of that ship, the fear grew deeper. Entire planets turned to chaos as civilians demanded protection, temples filled with worshippers who prayed to gods that had long been ignored. Markets closed because traders refused to travel near the warship's path, and soldiers who once stood tall now whispered about death that came without warning. The Galactic Council tried to control the panic, broadcasting messages of unity and courage. But their words felt hollow when even the strongest fleets had been erased without resistance. Some empires began to build more ships, working day and night in war factories, their skies burning with the light of new weapons, while others chose a different path, sending envoys with desperate pleas for peace. But every envoy disappeared, swallowed by the silence of the human ship, and their signals never returned. Fear turned into suspicion. Allies accused each other of secret negotiations with the humans. Neighbors accused neighbors of hiding spies, and even families broke apart. Some wanted to fight others, wanted to kneel before the coming storm in one corner of the galaxy. A proud empire of avian rulers declared that surrender was the only hope. They announced they would offer tribute to the humans before anyone else, and within hours their enemies attacked them, calling them traitors. Wars erupted not against the human ship, but between alien empires who could not agree on how to face it yet. All their violence meant nothing because above their struggles, the warship kept moving calm, steady, unstoppable. Its silence louder than all their screams in the deep halls of the Council. Soren the historian warned that the humans were not here by accident. He believed the warship's path was chosen long ago, and that it was seeking something in the galactic core, but no one listened to him, for their fear blinded them. Some believed the warship was a messenger of more to come, that somewhere in the void, fleets of human warships were awakening. Others believed it was the last of its kind, a lonely ghost of an extinct race. But whether ghost or army, the result was the same. Fear ruled the galaxy in the lower worlds. Riots broke out. People burned government buildings, shouting that their leaders had no plan in rich worlds. The elites prepared secret ships to escape should the warship approach in the temples. Of old religions, priests declared humanity to be the bringers of final judgment, while new cults rose, worshipping the warship as a god that had returned to cleanse the stars. Never before had the galaxy been so divided. Never before had so many voices spoken in chaos, and still the warship gave no answer. Only once did it break the silence, a signal spread across every system, clear in every language, simple in every mind. It said, "We are watching nothing more, nothing less," but it was enough to drive billions into terror, because it meant the humans were not blind. They saw everything and they judged everything. Empires doubled their defenses, commanders sent fleets to guard their capitals, but deep inside they knew defenses meant nothing. Against the power they had seen, leaders whispered in the dark to one another, some begging for alliance, some plotting betrayal, and some thinking of escape. But no plan gave comfort, because the warship was not just a threat. It was a promise that the old masters of war had returned. Fear spread farther than weapons ever could. It broke unity, it shattered courage, it poisoned hope, and across the galaxy, every species, every leader, every soldier, every child understood that the age of safety was over. The age of humanity had come again, and it began not with battle, but with fear. The galaxy stood divided as the human warship moved ever closer to the galactic core, and the silence of its journey forced every empire to make a choice fight. Submit or flee. In the great council chamber, the arguments turned to open threats. Reptilian warlords slammed their claws, demanding a grand alliance of every fleet in the stars to crush the intruder, while insectoid queens hissed that surrender was the only path to survival. Machine intellects calculated endless probabilities, showing that victory in open battle was almost impossible, but still declaring that submission would mean slavery forever. Some empires secretly sent messages to the humans begging for peace. Others plotted to betray their allies, hoping to be the first to kneel and be spared. But none knew if the warship even listened, and the not knowing was worse than any answer. In the factories of the strong empire's weapons were built faster than ever before. Entire moons were hollowed to create shipyards. Titanic cannons were raised on the surfaces of planets. Fleets that once fought each other now trained side by side in uneasy alliances. Yet even the bravest soldiers remembered the first fleet erased in a single strike, and they wondered if their deaths would even be noticed among the stars. Meanwhile, whispers spread among smaller empires that perhaps the humans had not come to rule, but to punish. They remembered the old stories, how once long ago the galaxy had betrayed humanity, turning against them in fear of their rise. Some whispered that the warship had come not for conquest, but for revenge, and those whispers grew louder every time the warship ignored calls for peace. For in its silence they heard judgment. Soren the historian stood before the council again, warning them that the choices they made now would decide the fate of all species. He begged them not to repeat the mistakes of the past, to understand that humanity did not think like other races. They valued freedom above life itself and would never bow to council or empire. They would either rule or burn. But his words fell on deaf ears because fear and pride made the leaders blind. In the shadows, spies and agents continued to attempt infiltration. They launched stealth ships, cloaked in the best technology of the galaxy. They hacked frequencies, they sent assassins. But the warship remained untouchable. Every spy vanished, every signal was lost. Every assassin erased, as if the void itself swallowed them, and this only deepened the mystery. Was the warship crewed by living humans, or was it a machine, a ghost of humanity left behind? No one knew, but all feared the answer across. The galaxy armies marched, preparing for a war. They did not believe they could win. Soldiers wrote last messages to their families. Citizens built shelters, deep underground. Leaders promised victory they did not believe in while on the other side. Of the divide, some empires sent secret offers of alliance to the humans, hoping to survive by bending the knee, and others prepared fleets not to fight the humans, but to flee the galaxy, entirely searching for new homes in the endless void. Every choice was made in desperation, and every choice carried doom, for no one could agree on a single path. Some believed resistance was honor, others believed survival was wisdom, and some believed nothing mattered, because against the humans, no choice would change the end. Still, the warship moved onward, its engines glowing with strange light, its surface marked with symbols no one could read, scanning planets as it passed, ignoring fleets that followed, ignoring weapons aimed at it as if nothing in the galaxy could touch it, and perhaps nothing could. Soren looked into the void and whispered that the choices of the empires were not choices at all. They were only different ways to meet the same fate, for the humans had returned, and the galaxy was no longer its own master. The war of choices was no longer about survival. It was about how the galaxy would face its judgment, with pride, with fear, with hope, or with surrender. And as the stars watched in silence, the warship drifted closer to the heart of everything, carrying with it the answer that no empire dared to face. The galaxy reached its breaking point when the human warship crossed the border of the central systems, for the empires that still clung to pride refused to wait any longer, and so the largest armada in history was formed. 10,000 ships gathered. In the void, a storm of steel and fire unlike anything the stars had ever seen. Warlords who once hated each other now stood together. Insectoid queens sent entire hive fleets. Reptilian warlords unleashed their strongest dreadnoughts. Avian empires brought carriers that blotted out suns, and even the cold machine intellects joined with war constructs of pure metal and logic. It was said that the light of their engines outshone the stars, and their weapons could split worlds, the council broadcast the event to every corner of the galaxy, telling their people that this would be the day they stood united against the ancient threat, and that the humans would be stopped before they reached the core. Soldiers shouted battle cries, priests blessed, the fleets and civilians prayed with hope and fear, but in truth, doubt filled every heart. For they all remembered how one warship had erased thousands before, yet still they moved forward, because pride demanded it, because survival demanded it. The armada spread into formation surrounding the human warship from every side, cutting off its path. The commanders sent one last demand for identification, one last call for peace, but the warship remained silent, its engines glowing steady like the heartbeat of a god. Then the order was given fire, and the void exploded. Thousands of cannons unleashed their fury beams of plasma missiles, of antimatter waves of energy that tore space apart. Itself crashed upon the dark hull of the human ship. The stars turned into firestorms. The void burned brighter than 100 suns, and still the warship endured weapons that could crack planets slammed against its armor, but the ship did not break. And when the storm of fire faded, the human warship was still there, glowing with crimson lines, alive with power, as if the attacks had only awakened it. Then came its answer. The hull opened, revealing weapons never seen before, gravity cannons that bent fleets together, crushing ships like paper star, lances that pierced through the strongest shields, as if they were glass storms of dark energy that erased entire squadrons in an instant. The galaxy watched in horror as 10,000 ships were thrown into chaos. Formations broke. Dreadnoughts vanished. Carriers collapsed into burning wreckage, the void filled with screams and static. Yet the human warship moved with calm precision. Every shot perfect, every strike. Merciless fleets that had survived countless wars now shattered like fragile toys. Commanders begged for retreat, but it was too late. The warship turned space itself into a weapon, bending time around its enemies, dragging them into black holes it created with a thought within hours. The grand armada that was meant to save the galaxy was gone, burned, crushed, erased, until only silence remained once more. Billions who had watched the battle through broadcasts now fell into despair. Some screamed, some wept, some cursed their leaders, and some fell to their knees whispering that the humans were gods, returned to judge them. The council sat in silence, unable to deny the truth. Their strongest force had been destroyed without wounding the enemy. The galaxy had no more illusions. It was not a war. It was a lesson. Humanity had shown its power, and no one could stand against it in the ruins of the battle. Only wreckage floated cold and lifeless, while the human warship drifted onward, untouched, unstoppable, its crimson lights burning brighter than ever as if feeding. On the destruction behind it, the clash of stars had ended, and only one star remained. The star of Earth, now reborn in the heart of the galaxy, after the clash of stars when the greatest armada in history had been shattered, and the void was filled. With the wrecks of proud fleets, the galaxy fell into silence. Whole empires trembled, unable to believe what they had seen, and for the first time in countless ages, no one spoke of victory, only of survival. And then the moment came when the warship finally chose to break its silence across every communication line on every world, every ship, every station. A signal appeared, not like the pulses before, but a clear image, a human face. It was not monstrous, not alien. It was simple, a man with dark eyes, calm expression, and a voice that carried weight beyond sound. He spoke, and his words were understood in every language at once, as if the stars themselves translated him. He said, "You forgot us. You believed we were gone, but we have returned." His voice was not loud, not angry, yet it struck deeper than any weapon. He continued long ago. "You feared us and turned against us. You believed that by erasing our name, by destroying our worlds, by betraying our people, you had ended humanity. But you were wrong. We did not die. We waited, and now we are here again." Some empires cried out in denial. Some cursed at the screen. Some trembled in silence, but none could look away. The human voice was steady like stone. He said, "We are not here to ask. We are not here to beg. We are not here to kneel. We have come to take our place among the stars once more. The galaxy belongs to us as much as it does to you, and we will not be denied." Then the image faded, replaced by the endless black surface of the warship glowing with crimson light. Silence followed, but it was a silence filled with terror. For now the mystery had ended, and the legends were alive. The humans still existed, and they had declared themselves not as invaders, not as allies, but as rulers in the Great Council. Chambers' chaos erupted. Some screamed that the humans must be destroyed at all costs. Others demanded immediate surrender. Some begged to form alliances, but the truth was clear. There was no choice left. The humans had spoken, and their voice was more powerful than fleets in the streets of countless worlds. People replayed the message again and again. Some fell to their knees in worship, believing the humans divine. Others swore vengeance and hatred. But even they spoke with shaking voices. Children asked their parents if the humans would kill them. Priests claimed prophecy had been fulfilled, and rebels in forgotten colonies shouted that humanity's return meant the fall of their oppressors. The galaxy no longer argued about if the humans had returned. It argued about what they would do next. Soren the historian listened to the voice again and again and whispered that it was not simply a threat. It was a reminder that humanity had always believed. They were masters of their own destiny, and now they had come to extend that destiny across the stars. The warship moved onward toward the core, its path unbroken, its purpose unknown. But now every world knew its arrival would bring more than silence. It would bring words that could shatter empires the human voice had spoken, and in that single moment, the balance of the galaxy had changed forever. For no matter how many ships were built, no matter how many plans were made, no one could erase the truth that humanity had returned, and their voice would echo through the stars until all who heard it chose their future either in submission or in fire. The galaxy could no longer hide from the truth after the human voice spoke. Worlds fell silent, leaders trembled, and billions of citizens knew that the old masters of war had returned. Yet even in fear there were some who refused to kneel, some who believed that surrender was worse than death. And so began the last resistance. It started with the Targan warlords' reptilian giants, whose pride was sharper than their blades. They declared that if the galaxy must fall, it would not fall without. A fight they gathered what remained of their fleets, calling allies from distant systems, even dragging rivals into their cause with promises of freedom or threats of shame. Soon thousands of ships once again filled the void, not as large as the Grand Armada that had already been destroyed, but forged with desperation and hate. Alongside the Targan came the insectoid hives who swore that their swarms would consume the human warship, even if it cost the lives of billions machines too cold. For fear joined as well, programming themselves for one final logic mission: eliminate the human threat, while others prepared forbidden weapons. Weapons so dangerous they had been sealed away for ages, black hole bombs capable of swallowing stars, planet killers that could shatter worlds, antimatter storms that could burn entire systems. The Council warned that using such weapons would doom them all, but the desperate did not listen to them. Extinction was already certain, unless they struck. First, and so the last resistance was born united not by loyalty, but by fear and pride. Their fleets launched into the void, chasing the human warship near the edge of the core. Their commanders broadcast messages across the galaxy declaring that this was the final stand, that victory or death would be decided in one moment. Civilians across the stars watched, holding their breath, some praying for hope, some preparing for the end. The resistance wasted no time. They attacked with everything. At once, black hole bombs detonated reality itself, twisting and breaking. Stars shivered as antimatter storms erupted, and planet-killer cannons fired beams so strong entire moons crumbled. Yet the human warship stood at the center of the storm, its hull glowing brighter with every strike as if it absorbed the fury around it. Weapons that should have ended. Galaxies washed over it like rain upon stone, and then the warship answered. Its crimson light spread across the void brighter than suns. Its gravity cannons tore through fleets, pulling ships into each other, crushing them into fragments. Its star lances cut through dreadnoughts as if they were paper. Its dark energy storms consumed swarms of insectoid ships, leaving nothing but silence. The black hole bombs were turned back against their owners, dragging entire fleets into the void. They had created antimatter storms were unraveled like threads by weapons that bent physics itself. Entire planets used as shields by desperate commanders were erased in moments, and still the warship moved steady calm, merciless. The galaxy watched in horror as the last resistance burned. Their screams filled every channel, their ships shattered, their weapons broken, their courage crushed. But even then, they fought, refusing to flee their commanders, ordered ramming runs, sacrificing ships to crash against the human hull. But not even those desperate acts left a mark. One by one, the proud fleets of the last resistance vanished until only silence remained again, and in that silence the galaxy understood no force, no weapon, no sacrifice could stop the will of humanity. When the battle ended, the void was filled with wreckage, the last warriors gone, their defiance erased. The warship stood alone, unbroken, untouched, its lights burning brighter than ever, as if declaring to the stars that the age of resistance was over, and the age of humanity had begun. The last resistance had chosen pride over surrender, but their pride had only given the galaxy another warning. No matter how strong, no matter how many, no matter how desperate, nothing could change the truth. Humanity had returned, and their judgment would not be denied. The galaxy was silent after the last resistance fell, the void filled, only with the wreckage of broken fleets and the glowing presence of the human warship. No one spoke of fighting anymore. No one dreamed of victory. Instead, the empires held their breath, waiting for the judgment of the returned masters, and soon that judgment came. The warship slowed near the heart of the galaxy, where the council worlds shone with their proud cities and endless towers. The same council that once erased humanity from history. now trembled in their chambers when the signal came. Again, the same human face appeared on every screen, every device, every world, his voice, calm, steady, and heavy with power. He said, "The galaxy has fought us, and the galaxy has failed. Your fleets are gone, your weapons broken, your courage scattered. You now have a choice to live under the new age or to burn in the ashes of the old." There was no shouting this time, no denial, no arrogance, only silence. The counselors looked at one another knowing that their pride had brought them to ruin leaders of empires who once claimed to rule the stars. Now lowered their heads, their voices shaking as they agreed to surrender messages spread from one world to another, declaring submission to the will of humanity, and soon entire systems knelt without. Hesitation, fearing the fate of those who resisted the human warship, moved from world to world, not destroying, but watching each planet with its crimson light, and everywhere it went, silence, followed fear, and obedience grew until no voice dared to speak against them. Then came the day when the humans revealed more than their warship, for from its surface, smaller vessels emerged, dark and sharp, carrying beings who stepped upon alien worlds for the first time in ages. Humans walked again. Among the stars they were tall, their eyes hard, their movements precise, and every step they took reminded the galaxy that this was not a myth, this was not a ghost. These were the same beings who had once ruled empires of their own and whose legacy had never truly died when they spoke to the people. They spoke not with anger, but with certainty. We do not come to destroy, we come to rule. We come to build a galaxy of order, not chaos, but make no mistake. This order will be ours. Their words spread. Like fire, some welcomed them as saviors, believing that only humanity could bring peace. Others cursed them in secret but obeyed for fear of what disobedience would bring, and in every corner of the galaxy the truth grew clear. Humanity had not only returned humanity. Now ruled it Soren the historian, who had watched from the beginning, wrote in his final record that this was not an invasion, but a return of destiny, that the stars themselves had waited for humanity to rise again, and that the silence of ages past had only been the deep breath before the storm. Now the storm was here, and nothing could stand against it. The people of the galaxy adapted quickly. Their leaders bowed, their armies disarmed their laws, rewritten to serve the will of Earth, and soon a strange peace spread, for the endless wars between empires stopped. No fleet dared attack another. No world dared rebel, for the human warship still drifted through the void, watching, glowing like a god of fire and silence. In time, even the fear began to change to acceptance, to respect, and to whispers of worship temples rose on distant planets where alien priests spoke of humanity as divine, the bringers of order, the masters of stars, and while some still hated in the dark. Their hatred could do nothing, for resistance was dead, and the galaxy belonged to humanity at last. And so began the dawn of a new age, not of many empires, but of one rule, one order, one will. Humanity had shaken the stars, and the stars would never be the same again.